So, what do? I pretend I'm talking to someone off screen so that it seems like I'm more interesting for the first 20 seconds. I don't know. I don't think it's working. Hey, I'm Lewis Cool. I'm one half of Grape Reason. There are a few videos circulating out there about the Battle Pass weapons, but I found these videos on the topic a bit lacking. A lot of them either talk about their personal preference or just lacking in some other important details. Disclaimer, this is all personal opinion, and if I'm wrong, feel free to tell me about it in the comments section down below, but I'm almost never wrong, and even if I am wrong, I will pivot the argument to appear less wrong so that let's just get on with the video, okay? So, all these weapons seem great, right? It's so hard to choose, except it really isn't. The TLDR on this is that the sword and the greatsword are kind of the only ones worth considering, and even then it's not much of a contest between the two. For perspective, I grabbed the sword, and my only sword user is the main character and Kaya, and I also have a Diluc. So, but Lou, you can have a super cool mini Venti Bow, and that spear has percentage attack on it, and stop. Thanks to the awesome group over at JinxAndTuna, the Monster Hunter Math guys, we know a bit more about the optimal stats, and if you haven't watched their video on why attack percentage is kind of a trap, the link is down below in the description. Of course, after you watch all of this. JinxAndTuna were the best resources for Monster Hunter community on optimal builds and stat lines to target, so when they come out with the numbers, it's pretty safe to assume that they're correct. To oversimplify their findings, attack percentage goes off of your base attack, that is the character and the weapon combined. This stat won't take into account any artifacts, weapon buffs like Tails of the Dragons and the places they go. This means that the strongest stat effects you can get after leveling your character and your weapon will be percentage damage, like percent physical damage on the Crescent Pike or percent cryo damage on your Kpop artifact. So let's look at the weapons really quickly in no particular order, but kind of totally from worst to best. So let's just go right out and start with the deathmatch. Some call it boring, but at a glance it looks decent, right? It has percentage attack and no, not at all. It has percentage attack, like I just said, and not percentage damage, which makes it bad. If this was percentage damage, it would actually be a real contender, but it would take a hell of a lot more attack percent to come even close. You would need a 5-star spear user, which doesn't exist yet, and the scaling of your base attack on this weapon would need to rival that of a 5-star weapon for this to even be worth considering when something like the Crescent Pike exists, which is overpowered. Next up, the Venti Bow. I admit it looks super cool, and I wouldn't fault you for grabbing this weapon just for the unique effect. Hell, it's probably even good if your main carry is an archer. But archer carries are just worse than other options due to their motion values. If you're not familiar with motion value is essentially how much damage you do for how long the animation takes. So on an archer, you don't get much out of the animation times for it, while something like a claymore gets way more for their animation. And in a game where you're constantly dodging, motion value counts more than something like DPS. If you're not optimally looking for it on a carry, you can just throw it on like a support Venti or Fischl, right? Well, all of Fischl's abilities scale really well from attack. So for someone like Fischl, you'd still want to put attack percentage on her because of that. But as a support, you'd still want something like Stringless. Stringless is by far way better for support Fischl and support Venti. And even if you wanted to use Fischl carry, you'd probably be better off with Rust or the Compound Bow. And the Compound Bow is really easy to get, really easy to refine. It just would be better. So you're thinking maybe just put it on Venti. Since this has crit rate on it, it's important to know that Swirl cannot crit. So you're going to be using Swirl with him and get no value out of that crit percentage. Unless you're just using his basic move that can crit, but the swirl effect can't. So while it will let Venti CC harder, it won't help him as his main role as Swirl Master General debuff extraordinaire, so you're better off with another weapon. For the Solar Pearl, I admit this weapon could be a contender, with some caveats. The main thing holding this weapon back is the lack of a charge attack damage bonus, so on something like Ningguang, who is charge attacking every 3 hits if you're doing her right, this is a deal breaker. But if you don't find yourself using charge attacks often, perhaps on Klee, where the charge attack range is really short, this is a great option. But for other people, this isn't the best, especially when you have things like Prototype Malice or Thrilling Tales of Yo Mama's Dragons, so if you're considering this for a support, it's not great. Serpent Spine. So right off the bat, it's a goddamn skeleton greatsword, and on that alone, it's a must-have. It increases total damage, so that's wonderful for any Claymore user. Even Chanyon, who deals ice damage for most of their attacks. But it requires the ability to dodge and avoid damage, or you lose the stacks. The main drawback here is that people have been reporting that you lose stacks of the weapon buff from DOT damage like Pyro or Electrocute per tick. So if you have a fully stacked greatsword and you get Pyro on you, tick tick tick, you lose all of it. If this is fixed or removed, this weapon will be great, but with the relative constant frequency of these effects in Dungeons and Abyss, it means that you're most likely going to be sitting at a 0 to 6% damage buff, unless you can keep that shield up with Noelle or mitigate the damage in some other way. If you have a way to cleanse it, like if you're using Barbara and you have you're in a Pyro dungeon or a Pyro effects on you. A lot of ifs in the statement of whether this is a good weapon is the problem. Additionally, the craftable claymores are freaking amazing. You have the White Blind, which is the best weapon for Noelle, and also just stacks your attack, so even if you were only interested in attack, this still does that relatively similarly. And then you have Prototype Animus, which is amazing. It has 100% uptime. It's easily refinable. It's probably I think it's like the third best. If you have it refined to 5, it's about the third or fourth best greatsword in the game, including 5 stars. So it's hard to pick this weapon over something that you can just get as a free-to-play player. That leaves us with the Black Sword, which I already told you, that's my pick. In the end, the Black Sword is just straight up 100% uptime of a 20% damage bonus overall. Even without looking at the healing portion of it, this is still an amazing sword. Add in that you heal on crits every 5 seconds, you won't even need a second healer on Abyss. Especially if you have Prototype Malice on a second, like on a support mage like Ningguang, they can spam heal you through everything, just easily. The sword is unique and has no comparable alternatives, while also being one of the best, if not the best 4-star sword in the game. So it's really an easy call. Just get this sword and worry about getting someone to use it later if you don't have someone who's using sword. Also, probably the main character will be one of your most flexible options going forward as they open up new worlds and new zones, new areas, because you'll be able to use every element eventually. It's a good investment going forward. So, when making your decision, it essentially only comes down to a few factors. 1. Does this weapon offer something unique, or is there a better option that's easier to refine? 2. Do the stats benefit the role? Are you playing this character as a carry? Does this work for a support? It has crit % damage on everything, so it's hard to really suggest these for support role in most cases. And do you want to build something different? Because if you do, that's fine. Just if you have some niche build in mind, like full attack Noelle or carry Venti, like go for it. Everything can work. Any character can be very good at any role with enough effort and time, but if you're looking for a weapon that doesn't have any real comparable option or alternative, the Black Sword is the best contender right now. And that's it. Like, subscribe, follow, hit the buttons. There you go.